Mr. Speaker, before I address this August House, I'd like to request that we observe a moment of silence in remembrance of former members of Parliament who have departed during the course of the year. Amen. I'd like to thank Botswana for demonstrating a sense of political maturity and tolerance during the just-ended general elections, which were characterized by respect for one another, peace, and transparency. Honourable members, this being the first time that I report on our progress in the last 12 months immediately after our general elections, it is critical for me to present my government's achievements and priorities as we chart the way forward in terms of responding to the needs of Botswana. Mr. Speaker, during my inauguration speech on the 1st of November 2019, I made a number of policy pronouncements which are part of my development roadmap, which seeks to propel this country to greater heights, chief amongst them being the National Transformation Strategy, which is the blueprint for my government's development agenda. Our current National Development Plan 11, 2017 to 2023, is being reviewed, and it is an opportune time for us to accommodate current issues and trends that will address the many challenges that we continue to face as a developing country. It is my fervent hope that honourable members will work with my government to ensure that we achieve our development objectives, whose aim is to improve the welfare of Botswana and to ensure that no one is left behind. The Global Economic Overview, Mr. Speaker. According to the International Monetary Fund's World Economic Outlook update released in October of 2019, global economic activity slowed down, largely due to heightened trade tensions between the United States of America and the People's Republic of China, as well as a weakening business and consumer confidence, which worsened financial market sentiments in emerging markets. However, the US has since responded by implementing a flexible monetary policy stance, and markets have now become more optimistic about the US-China trade deal. On the basis of the foregoing, global growth is now projected to slow from 3.6% in 2018 to 3% in 2019. Growth is, however, anticipated to revert to the 2018 level in 2020 by registering a 3.6% increase. The anticipated recovery in 2020 is predicated on fiscal policy stimulus that is being implemented in China. For emerging markets, growth is projected to stabilize slightly below 5%, whereas in sub-Saharan Africa, growth is anticipated to reach 3.2% in 2019 and 3.6% in 2020. The growth rates anticipated for both 2019 and 2020 represent slight downward revisions by 1.7% and 0.8%, respectively, owing to a decline in growth for the Republic of Angola and the Republic of Nigeria. The domestic economy, Mr. Speaker, the domestic economic growth increased to reach 4.5% in 2018, following a growth of 2.9% recorded in 2017. This significant increase was spearheaded by the transport and communications, mining and water, as well as the electricity sectors, albeit with a decline in water and electricity value addition in the fourth quarter of 2018. The decline in the water and electricity sectors was attributed to a plant shutdown in Morupule B, which resulted in a slowdown in domestic production, which triggered an increase in demand for imported electricity. On the domestic outlook, the economy is forecast to grow on average by 4.4% in the medium term. Specifically, the economy is currently forecast to grow by 3.6% and 4.4% in 2019 and 2020, respectively. The positive prospects for the medium-term outlook are underpinned by an anticipated increase in non-mining sectors. Within the non-mining sector, trade, hotels and restaurants, finance and banking, as well as the transport and communication services sectors are anticipated to also contribute positively to economic growth. Inflation, Mr. Speaker. In 2018, the inflation rate fluctuated between 2.8% and 3.8%, resulting in an average inflation rate of 3.2%. This reflects the Bank of Botswana's ability to maintain inflation within its objective range of 3 to 6%. Inflation is anticipated to continue to remain within the bank's objective range in the medium term. Foreign exchange reserves, Mr. Speaker, as at December 2018, foreign exchange reserves stood at 71,400,000,000 pula, which represented a decline by 3.2% compared to 73,700,000,000 pula recorded in the same month in 2017. However, as at August 2019, foreign exchange reserves stood at 74,200,000,000 pula, an increase by 3.9% compared to the level attained in December 2018. This increase was due to gains from asset price changes, exchange rate movements, and income on reserves. The level of reserves in August 2019 is equivalent to 15 months of import cover of goods and services. Of the total amount of reserves of 74,200,000,000 pula, 19,500,000,000 pula, or 26%, is attributed to the government investment account. Exchange rate movements, Mr. Speaker. The pula nominal exchange rate appreciated by 2.4% against the South African rand, while it depreciated by 1.7% against the special drawing rights, SDR, in the 12 months to September 2019. The depreciation of the pula against SDR further suggests that Botswana's export competitiveness remained positive, especially in the markets of advanced economies. Additionally, the pula continued to show signs of a stable real effective exchange rate. The REER, however, depreciated by 0.3% in the 12 months to August 2019, reflecting a lower inflation rate in Botswana compared to that of its trading partners. Business facilitation, Mr. Speaker. We will continuously improve the doing business environment and competitiveness of our enterprises through close monitoring and evaluation of all our processes and procedures, as well as the regulatory framework, with a view to remove impediments. When I took office, I promised to create jobs, and this cannot be achieved without rolling out the red carpet for sustainable and impactful investment. We are challenged by our market size as an economy. Therefore, we must come up with deliberate interventions to promote export-oriented businesses, which will be achieved through the Botswana Export Development Program, the special economic zones, and regional integration. To facilitate the ease of doing business in the country, government is reviewing both the Immigration Act to make sure that it effectively enables the employment of non-citizens and the point-based system to make the assessment of work permits applications fair, objective, and more transparent. Furthermore, the automation of the work permit process will be carried out to improve the turnaround time for the processing of applications. Moreover, government is in the process of developing a secure and integrated system that will interface the business sector with the immigration and civil registration systems to ensure service efficiency by government. This will be achieved through facilitation of online services, especially for critical functions such as visa applications, the processing of work and residence permits, and the development of the electronic identity document. The online business registration, OBRS, which went live in June this year, has resulted in the reduction of starting a business indicator processes from 9 to 7 days, as it has combined name reservation, declaration, and registration to become a single service. The BRS has also reduced the average turnaround time for companies and businesses name registration, as well as the starting a business sub-indicator, from an average of 5 days to 1 day, and from 48 days to 37 days, respectively. Between June and September 2019, a total of 52,370 companies were registered, of which 41,363 were re-registrations and 11,007 being new registrations. The total revenue collected from registrations amounted to 18,240,459 pula, 74 tebe. The integration of the OBRS with other systems such as that of the Botswana Unified Revenue Services, BURS, the Civil and National Registration System, and the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Board has been completed and is operational. The last phase, which will enable companies to file annual returns online, has commenced and will be completed in March 2020, before the end of the financial year. Government is also in the process of amending the Environmental Impact Assessment Act and its regulations with a view to reducing the turnaround time for evaluating the environmental impact assessment project documents. The review of the EIA legislative instruments has taken long due to the consultative and technically complex nature of the process, but it is anticipated that this will be concluded during the current financial year. To further improve starting a business, government has enacted both the Trade and Industrial Development Amendment Acts, which will go a long way in reducing the number of days for starting a business in Botswana from 48 to 13 days. This has enabled government to do away with licensing of businesses that do not have health and safety risks. The licenses will not be issued over the counter. The licenses will now be issued over the counter, thus enhancing the country's performance in the country's competitiveness index. Furthermore, the industrial policy of 2014 will also be reviewed to align it with the aspirations of both the National Vision 2036 as well as the dictates of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Following approval of the Trade Industrial Development Act during the July sitting of Parliament, the development of the trade regulations and industrial development regulations to facilitate implementation is ongoing, and they are expected to be completed by the end of the financial year. Government has also reviewed the land policy that will facilitate citizens to use their land productively by enabling a mixed use of land approach. This is meant to empower Botswana, and the guidelines pertaining to this policy have been distributed to members of the public. Diversification, Economic Diversification Drive, or EDD. Mr. Speaker, The Economic Diversification Drive strategy is currently under review through the Program on Support to Economic Diversification and Inclusive Growth, EDIG, with the collaboration of the United Nations Development Programme. The main aim of the review is to assess the achievements of the intended objectives of the EDD strategy and to put in place interventions that will enhance its implementation. Government will come up with legislation to ensure compliance with the EDD provisions by all stakeholders. Citizen Entrepreneurial Development Agency, or CEDA, Mr. Speaker, during the 2018-2019 financial year, a total of 2,466 jobs were created in the manufacturing, property, services, and agricultural sectors with a total investment of 466 million pula. Project Facilitation Fund, PFF. Mr. Speaker, the Project Facilitation Fund, which was launched in May 2019, was set up to assist business startups with funding for environmental impact assessment, soil tests, and certification, as well as promote survival of existing business enterprises. A total of 5 million pula has been set aside for the PFF, which will be dispersed as part grant and part loan. The gambling industry. Mr. Speaker, the Gambling Authority has embarked on a licensing program that will result in a national lottery. The lottery will transform development and financing of charities, sports and recreation, which is expected to spur arts, culture, and youth development. The process to appoint a national operator is ongoing, and it is expected to be concluded by the end of this financial year. Trade facilitation, Mr. Speaker, the African Continental Free Trade Area, which in February 2019 was signed for by Botswana formally. The agreement has so far been signed by 54 African states, and it came into force in May 2019, following ratification by the requisite 22 African states. It is anticipated that the agreement will earnestly become effective on 1st July 2020, following the finalization of the tariff offers by member states. It is then that Botswana will take advantage of the 1,200,000,000 people that is the estimated market in the African continent. The Tripartite Free Trade Area, TFTA. Mr. Speaker, the TFTA comprises 27 countries from the 3 regional economic communities, being the Common Market for East and Southern Africa, COMESA, the East African Community, EAC, and the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC. Negotiations on the TFTA have since been concluded as the member states have finalized tariff offers. Botswana has ratified the TFTA, and the process of depositing the instrument of ratification will be concluded by the end of this month. This will enable the private sector to access the TFTA market with a combined population of nearly 625 million people and a total gross domestic product of approximately $1 trillion US. So far, government has held consultative engagements with the Botswana Meat Commission, Botswana Ash, the Botswana Vaccine Institute, and Flowtech on how to immediately access the East African community market. This has also afforded government an opportunity to understand challenges encountered by exporting enterprises. The African Opportunity Act, AGOA. Mr. Speaker, following the extension of the African Opportunity Act, AGOA, to 2025, Botswana developed a national response strategy, and its implementation is ongoing. To date, work plans have been developed, and some progress has been realized under the arts and crafts and meat products sectors. Under the arts and the crafts sector, Botswana will collaborate with Eswatini Fair Trade to leverage on best practices and assist in developing a comprehensive strategy for the sector, which will constitute external market access and local capacity building targeted at crafters in rural areas. Additionally, a storage facility as a pilot project for Shakawe, Gumare, and the Etsa areas has been set up in Gumare to ensure that various basketry weavers are accorded the opportunity to expand their market base and exhibit their products to potential international tourists. Government has also commenced the establishment of an e-commerce platform or marketplace for purposes of availing and marketing arts and crafts, while the profiling and packaging of selected products for eventual uploading on the marketplace is ongoing. Investment promotion. Mr. Speaker, the Botswana Investment and Trade Center, BITC, promotion drive created 3,981 jobs during 2018-2019 financial year. The services, agriculture and agro-processing sectors, followed by the manufacturing sector, contributed more to realizing these jobs. The cumulative foreign direct investment inflows amounting to 3,220 million pula were realized, largely attributable to the more than expected performance from the financial services sector. The realized cumulative domestic investment and expansions for the same period was 2,608 million pula. The Botswana Investment and Trade Center continues to carry out several initiatives targeted towards expanding Botswana's export base. Exporting companies who benefited from the Botswana Export Development Program realized 3,299 million pula of export earnings in the past year. Special economic zones. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that 8 special economic zone sites have been mapped nationally at the following locations: the Sesaretsakama International Airport, Fairgrounds, Lobatse, Panamatenga, Palapes, Libipikwe, Tuli Block, and Francis Town. So far, progress has been made with regard to the development of the 4 priority zones, being Sesaretsakama International Airport, whose master plan has been approved and the process of developing detailed designs has commenced. Furthermore, a site has been identified at Panamatenge to be used for processing and manufacturing purposes for their agricultural products. Within the same zone, more land has been identified to house 12 silos, each totaling 5,000 metric tons steel grain storage facility. Cluster development. Mr. Speaker, in our quest to continuously grow and diversify the economy as well as to develop exports, my government continues to implement the Cluster Development Program aimed at improving business productivity, value chains, and competitiveness. The model largely focuses on promoting private sector growth by facilitating linkages and interdependence among companies, hence improving their performance in the production of goods and services and thereby creating employment. As I indicated in my inaugural address last year, the project started in February 2018 with 3 prioritized sectors of beef in Molopo to Sandveld, including Kweneng, Southeastern Katlan regions, tourism in Gamiland region, and finance and knowledge-intensive business services in Gaborone. I'm happy to indicate that export-led strategies for the 3 clusters have been developed and are currently being handed over to the implementing ministries. It is worth acknowledging the key role played by the private sector, as well as the academia, in developing these strategies and the role they continue to play in their implementation. I wish to implore these parties to continue embracing this initiative, as this will expand the domestic economy and bring to reality the shift to a private sector-led economy. The government, PPP, will continue to develop more sectors with diamond beneficiation in Gaborone and small stock in Lubu area in the Kalahari district coming before the end of this financial year. In order to develop the indigenous expertise in cluster-based competitiveness in Botswana, a training of trainers course is ongoing at the Botswana Public Service College in partnership with the European Foundation for Cluster Excellence. After completing the course, the trainers will not only be qualified to train in Botswana, but in the region as well. Education, Early Childhood Education, ECE. Mr. Speaker, government continues to expand the provision of early childhood education in public schools to improve learner readiness for school and lifelong learning. The overall objective of this program is to ensure learner readiness at Standard 1. The number of public primary schools offering the year-long reception class program has increased from 122 in 2014, when the program started, to 590 in April 2019, which translates to 78.1% of public primary schools providing early childhood education. The 590 schools had an enrollment of 23,637 as of April 2019. This has increased the net enrollment of children in the early childhood education program from 17% in 2014 to 39% against a target of 80% in 2019. The aim is to have all the 755 public primary schools in the country offering the program by 2022. Introduction of outcome-based education system at senior secondary school, Mr. Speaker. As I indicated in my inauguration speech on 1st November 2019, government continues to implement some critical reform programs under the Education and Training Sector Strategic Plan, ETSSP, aimed at enhancing access and quality education in line with the local and global demands. Central to these reforms is the introduction of multiple pathways at senior secondary school level, where students will pursue subjects of their interest and capability through the outcome-based education program. The implementation of this program is expected to commence in January 2021. 2 schools have been identified for the introduction of multiple pathways, being Maun Senior Secondary School for tourism and hospitality, and Moen College for agriculture and horticulture. Other schools are being considered for the rollout of pathways. To improve curriculum delivery, continuous in-service training is offered to upgrade the competencies of teachers. The government continues to upgrade primary school teacher certificate holders to diploma level. To date, 98% of primary school teachers hold a diploma as a minimum teaching qualification. Furthermore, teachers are capacitated to use technology as a platform for learning. Inclusive education. Mr. Speaker, government continues to implement the Inclusive Education Policy of 2011 to ensure access and equity in education, particularly for learners with special needs, as supported by the Sustainable Development Goals. This has resulted in an increase in the enrollment of learners with special needs from 5,349 in 2017 to 5,400 in 2018. Moreover, government has commenced the process of developing a language policy in readiness for the introduction of other languages in schools. The establishment of the Botswana Teaching Council, which is aimed at professionalizing teaching, was passed by the July 2019 Parliament meeting, and preparations for its establishment are underway. Scaling up access to vocational education and training. Mr. Speaker, to align the vocational education and training curriculum to modern technology and industry needs, government has started a review of 3 levels of curriculum according to the National Credit Qualifications Framework, NCQF, for the smooth transition and transfer of the examination function to the Botswana Examinations Council, and in order for government to continue with the examination of artisans, The Madirelo Training and Testing Center is being accredited as an awarding body, whilst the Construction Industry Trust Fund has been accredited as an education training provider by the Botswana Qualifications Authority. Botswana has extended CITF, that is the Construction Industry Trust Fund, services through the development of rapid skill centers across the country. The rapid skill centers at Tsau, Chadibe, and Moremaoto are operational, while the Tamaga Center has been completed. Plans are underway for the establishment of 6 more rapid skills centers at Sojwe, Kakeya, Pitsani Molopo, Boxpits, Ngujani, and Shakawe. Stakeholders who included tribal leaders, civic leaders, and land board authorities have already been consulted on the projects, and the sites for these centers have been identified and duly allocated. The Botswana Examinations Council transformation. Mr. Speaker, government intends to expand the mandate of the Botswana Examinations Council to include vocational education training assessments and align it to the National Credit and Qualifications Framework, NCQF. The objectives are to provide strong assessment systems with data to facilitate teaching and learning, monitoring and certification of learners in general education and technical vocational education and training, TVET. The review of assessment programs in order to align them to the NCQF, and the review and introduction of new qualifications that meet the demands of the labor market. The Botswana Examinations Council Amendment Bill has been approved by Parliament. Health, Mr. Speaker, the provision of quality health care remains one of my government's top priorities. This is evidenced by a commitment to the global call to universal health coverage and health systems strengthening in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Target 3.8, which talks to, and I quote, achieving universal health coverage, end quote. Maternal health, Mr. Speaker. In pursuit of the global maternal mortality ratio target of less than 70 per 100,000 live births by 2030, Botswana experienced a notable decrease from 156.6 per 100,000 live births in 2016 to 143.2 per 100,000 live births in 2017. Government intends to resuscitate intensive maternal health care strategies, including the appointment of a national coordinator for maternal mortality reduction and the engagement of relevant stakeholders to come up with holistic solutions to address the maternal mortality ratio in Botswana. Child health, Mr. Speaker. According to the 2018 Botswana Demographic Survey, there's a major setback in both infant and under 5 mortality rates. The infant mortality rate increased from 17 per 1,000 live births in 2011 census compared to 38 per 1,000 live births in 2018, while the under 5 mortality rate increased from 28 per 1,000 live births in 2011 census to 56 per 1,000 live births in 2018. These figures are set against the Sustainable Development Goals targets of 12 per 1,000 live births and 25 per 1,000 live births for infant and under 5 mortality rates, respectively. The increase in the mortality rates is mainly attributed to hygiene-related issues, particularly in rural areas where resources are limited. To address these challenges, government is continuously implementing programs that provide equitable and robust child survival mechanisms to accelerate the uptake of high-impact interventions, including breastfeeding, immunizations, zinc sulfate, vitamin A supplementation, and oral rehydration salts, or ORS for short. Communicable and non-communicable diseases. Mr. Speaker, government continues to spend significant financial resources as well as deployment of human and material resources towards the fight against communicable and non-communicable diseases, NCDs. Having recognized the health and economic burdens of the escalating rates of non-communicable diseases in the country, the Botswana multi-sectoral strategy for the prevention and control of non-communicable diseases for 2018-2023 was developed. The strategy provides an opportunity for, among other things, a focus on the government's ability to restore the quality of life for those affected, defining prevention, primary care, holistic and multi-sectoral strategies in the fight against NCDs, as well as outlining a roadmap of critical activities that will be integrated by various stakeholders in addressing NCDs and pursuing a good lifestyle. With regards to communicable diseases, Botswana faces a big challenge in that an estimated 6,000 people per annum are affected by tuberculosis, TB. The emergence of drug-resistant forms of the disease threatens to hinder the gains made in combating the disease. Since the establishment of multi-drug resistant TB clinical centers in 2007, the country has registered 1,238 cases, with an average of 100 cases being registered every year. National AIDS and Health Promotion Agency. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, government expanded the mandate of the National AIDS Coordinating Agency to encompass non-communicable diseases, NCDs. The National AIDS and Health Promotion Agency, NAPA, has therefore commenced and implementing both the third National Strategic Framework for HIV and AIDS and the National NCD Strategy, jointly launched in June 2019. The two strategies will serve as roadmaps for the country's response to these epidemics for the next 5 years. Furthermore, the strategies will strengthen public awareness and community mobilization on the prevention and control of NCDs and HIV to address risk factors. Botswana is on track to achieving the United Nations 1990 fast-track targets. According to the current program data, 86% of people living with HIV had tested and knew their status. Of those who knew their status, 83% were on treatment and 96% were virally suppressed. Botswana is a high-burden country with 370,000 people estimated to be living with HIV and an adult prevalence rate of more than 20%. UNAIDS further estimates that new HIV infections stood at 8,500 in 2018. A third of such new HIV infections occurred among young people aged 15 to 24 years, of which 67% were young women, indicating an even higher risk of infections among adolescent girls and young women. My government allocates resources annually through our national budget and those mobilized from partners to the HIV program. Like any other country that battles with issues of development, there are ineffective social systems in some areas. We are nevertheless steadfast in ensuring a legal and policy environment for all players to participate and play their part. Recently, we announced the provision of free antiretroviral treatment to all, including non-citizens. Alcohol and substance abuse. Mr. Speaker, the number of people who require care as a result of excessive consumption of alcohol and other substances, drugs, has increased over the years and is a major source of concern to government. Government is rehabilitating people with alcohol and other substance use disorders in collaboration with non-governmental organizations. These clients are either referred to facilities run by NGOs or by government health facilities to deal with their different challenges. Government has identified the Old Serua Institute of Health Sciences, IHS, as a facility that will serve as the first national substance use treatment center. Now that the designs for this center are complete, the refurbishment will commence soon, and it will be completed in 22 months. Both in and outpatient services will be provided for this facility. The facility will also improve access to emergency and trauma care services in order to reduce mortality and morbidity related to non-communicable diseases. Availability of drugs. Mr. Speaker, national drug availability has been a challenge in our health system, with worrying trends of sporadic and widespread shortages across the country. As at the end of September 2019, there is a notable improvement, with availability averaging 80% at health facilities across the country. This is due to local procurement at facilities while awaiting deliveries from the central medical stores. To further improve on drug supplies at CMS, central medical stores, government is working on implementing other strategic interventions, such as purchasing medicines through SADC pooled procurement protocol, which has been signed by member states, and through international pooled procurement agencies or key partners, United Nations agencies such as the World Health Organization. Rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, in order to fully address rehabilitation needs of people with complex neurological conditions and traumas arising from, among others, road traffic accidents, injuries of one form or another, work is at an advanced stage to develop the National Health Rehabilitation Policy, which will pave the way for the establishment of a specialized rehabilitation center. This center will need specialized personnel and equipment to produce the desired results. Health infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the construction of health facilities across the country is ongoing, and projects are at different levels of completion. The upgrading of clinics is progressing satisfactorily at various villages such as Muchudi, Sepopa, Ngarange, Toteng, Dikar, Kautui, Borotsi, and Dibeti. All these projects started in the last financial year. Staff housing units are part of these projects and will, upon completion, go a long way in reducing shortage of accommodation for health workers. All these projects are scheduled for completion this financial year. Primary hospitals, particularly the level of 70-bed capacity, are also under construction. These include Shakawe and Moshopa. The upgrading of the Tutume and Gumara primary hospitals are at the design stage level. Other health infrastructure projects that were recently completed and handed over to government include the Kachikau Clinic, Reikops Operating Theatre, Old Mahalabse Hospital, as well as staff houses in Mabutsani, Matangwani, and Maitengwe. During this financial year, a total of 261 million pula was set aside for the maintenance of buildings and replacement of key equipment and plants such as boilers, chillers, generators, and laundry machines. Social protection. Ipelere. Mr. Speaker, the Ipelere program has contributed to improve livelihoods through the provision of temporary relief to vulnerable groups in rural and urban areas. The program has also contributed to the development of communities through undertaking of various construction and maintenance projects of essential public facilities within the communities. Drought management strategy, Mr. Speaker. government has taken a decision to develop a drought management strategy which would classify drought as a permanent feature in our budget plans rather than an emergency. The strategy will be completed before the end of this financial year. In view of the prolonged dry spell period, government has declared the 2018-2019 financial year as a drought year, with mitigation measures being a 35% subsidy on livestock feeds, emergency food baskets in the Kalahari, Okavango, and the Northeast districts, and continuation of rations for children under the age of 5 and school feeding at primary schools. People with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this August House that significant progress has been made, which will pave the way for Botswana to accede to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities by developing a draft national disability framework. Following the wide public consultations, work on the revision of the National Disability Policy of 2019, the strategy, implementation plans, as well as the development of a bill relating to people with disabilities have been completed. The revised policy and the bill will be submitted to Parliament for adoption. Disaster management. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance the management of disaster risk in the country, a multi-hazard contingency plan is being developed with the financial support from the United Nations Development Programme and is expected to be finalized next year. This plan shifts from the single sectoral approach of managing disasters to a more systemic and collaborative disaster planning system that will enhance response time to all types of disasters, maximize loss of life, damage to property, and as well as prioritize the needs of the vulnerable groups in our society. Poverty eradication. Mr. Speaker, poverty, unemployment, and inequality remain challenges faced by the country, and both the reason that the National Vision 2036 and the National Development Plan 11 have prioritized these challenges to ensure lasting solutions are pursued to reverse the trends. Since the inception of the Poverty Eradication Program in 2011, a total of 38,418 beneficiaries have been funded, out of which 29,877 projects are operating. 5,609 projects are at different stages of implementation across the country. The operating projects have created 33,918 jobs. In addressing the delays in packaging and backlogs that resulted in significant numbers waiting to be assisted, have cleared the backlog in Gauteng, Soa, Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, Buteti, Bubirwa, Lobatse, and Francistown. Progress is being made to clear Palape and Jwaneng soon, with the ultimate results being to significantly reduce the backlog in all other districts. Mr. Speaker, the exit strategy was developed and launched in February this year. It clearly outlines interventions that facilitate graduation of beneficiaries with excelling projects. To date, 2,094 excelling projects have graduated from the program. I awarded certificates of graduation to 30 of these beneficiaries during the National Poverty Eradication Expo early this year. Provision of breakfast at primary schools. Mr. Speaker, government started providing breakfast meals at primary schools in April 2019 with a view to promote optimal health, growth and development, prevention of nutritional deficiencies, as well as align the primary school menu to that of secondary schools. The menu of primary schools will support poverty eradication and homegrown feeding initiatives to economically empower and capacitate Botswana and promote micro, and small-scale entrepreneurship. Gender issues. Mr. Speaker, it is important to highlight that government recognizes gender equality as fundamental to sustainable development. To this end, government continues to support women in accessing markets through the annual business expositions. In 2019, government hosted the 20th National Women's Exposition, of which total of 169 women entrepreneurs showcased their products, including food processing and packaging, agricultural products, leather clothing, caskets, cosmetics, and jewelry. The Women's Economic Empowerment Program is being reviewed, and the exercise will be finalized before the end of this financial year. Government has noted with concern that gender-based violence, GBV, is one of the critical areas that impede women, girls, and men from fully enjoying their human rights and unleashing their potential. The National Relations Study of 2018 revealed that 37% of women and 21% of men have suffered some form of violence in their lifetime, which occurred within intimate partner relationships. To address this problem, government will intensify the implementation of the national strategy towards ending gender-based violence. The strategy focuses on the comprehensive care and support of GBV survivors, prevention of new GBV incidences, strengthening national capacity to address GBV, improving efficiency and effectiveness of the coordination and management of national GBV response, the strategic information and knowledge management on GBV. Review of the Marriage Act of 2001. The Marriage Act is currently under review to provide for, amongst others, the registration of religious and traditional marriages, monitoring and regulation of appointed marriage officers, as well as to review the age of consent for marriage. Mr. Speaker, government has introduced the Botswana Blue Card, BBC, to allow persons who cease to be citizens of Botswana, such as those who have renounced Botswana citizenship, to retain the right to unlimited stay in Botswana. The Botswana Blue Card holders will have the right to visit, live, and work in Botswana. However, they will not be entitled to Umang and the Botswana passport because they would have ceased to be citizens of Botswana at the time they acquired the citizenship of another country. Youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, participation in the Youth Business Exposition grew from 224 in 2016-2017 to 602 in 2018-2019. The winners are offered mentorship by stakeholders and also benefit from training and mentorship. The Youth Exchange platform is also a form of youth empowerment, which offers young people an opportunity to benchmark best practices both locally and internationally. Youth in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, government is currently marketing and positioning agriculture as an attractive and financially rewarding career of choice to young people. The campaign is expected to attract talented and commercially minded young farmers into the agriculture industry. Currently, young people contribute 12%, 6.4%, and 2.25% to rain-fed arable production, beekeeping, and horticulture production, respectively. Youth participation in commercial livestock production is currently at less than 4%. Review of the Youth Development Fund and the Botswana Youth Policy. The review of the Youth Development Fund to identify gaps in its implementation and provide a simple model on youth economic empowerment is ongoing. The review of the Botswana National Youth Policy with technical assistance from UNDP will be completed by the end of this financial year. The aim is to make the policy more relevant and youth-centric to better serve their interests, particularly with a young minister. Local governance, development of property valuations and rate and regulations. Mr. Speaker, In implementing the Local Government Act of 2012, government initiated the development of property valuation and rate and regulations to ensure the application of property valuation and rates in the rural areas, and thus maximize local levels economic growth. The regulations have been gazetted and are ready for dissemination to stakeholders before the end of this financial year. Formulation of the National Decentralization Policy. Mr. Speaker, the formulation of the National Decentralization Policy is at an advanced stage. It is expected to be completed during this financial year. Upon its completion and approval, the policy will work as a tool to guide the overall service delivery, coordinate and align decision-making to enhance democracy at the national and local levels and promote popular participation for sustainable national development. Village infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the construction work for village infrastructure projects in Khabane, Tutume and Kang commenced in 2017-2018 and will be completed by the end of the financial year. As of June 2019, progress stood at 72% for both the Khabane and Tutume projects and 78% at Kang, while 687 people have been employed. The completion of these infrastructure projects will not only make these village alternative investment locations and grow local economies, but will also create employment opportunities and improve user safety and reduce damage to property due to uncontrolled storm waters. Agricultural development and food security. Mr. Speaker, the food import bill in 2018 was estimated at 7,745,000,000 pula, compared to 6,863,000,000 pula in 2017. The bulk of food items imported are dairy and dairy products, followed by fruits and vegetables. Dairy sector. The dairy sector has a well-organized value chain compared to other agricultural commodities and has clear linkages regarding production, processing, distribution, and marketing. Since milk processing plants such as Clover, Botswana, and Parmalat are already established, government is leveraging on these to promote the establishment of commercial dairy farms to produce adequate raw milk and feed the value chain. The annual national demand for milk was 65 million litres during 2018-2019 financial year. However, 9,582,985.5 litres of milk was produced locally, compared to 8,657,781.5 litres produced in 2017-2018. This increase in liquid milk is attributable to the implementation of the dairy sector. The upcoming Milk Africa dairy farm in Lobatsi is expected to milk 500 cows, which will significantly increase milk production in the next financial year. This farm is expected to gradually grow the number of milking cows to 2,000 by adding 500 cows every year. Sunnyside Dairy Farm, which is the major supplier of liquid milk, is continuing to expand, and to date it produces 500,000 litres of milk per month. Government is also establishing marketing infrastructure to facilitate market access. The Pitsani milk collection plant has been renovated. Efforts are also ongoing to assist farmers to manage the Seroe milk pasteurizing plant, which is not operating at full capacity, producing only 8,000 litres of milk per day. There are other smaller milk collection plants in Maun, Silibepikwe, Khanti, and Molepolle that have been assisted to supply milk to government institutions in their respective districts. Beef production. Mr. Speaker, during the 2018-2019 financial year, a total of 271,210 cattle was slaughtered both the Botswana Meat Commission and private slaughter facilities, against the annual target of 310,900 animals. There has been a recorded decline in the national cattle population from 3,100,000 in the last 7 years to an estimated 2 million in 2018. This is a very worrisome trend, which government is responding to in a number of ways to increase the national herd. As a way of responding to the situation, government has adopted a beef cluster strategy, which has identified areas of improvement which include ways of upgrading production, research and technology transfer, and promotion of marketing of beef. This is done in partnership with the government of New Zealand through the Beef Productivity Training Program at Ramatlabama ranches. The program offers training to farmers and herdsmen on best farm practices and animal production initiatives, and is meant to equip farmers with industry-led livestock management and increase on calving rate on an annual basis. Furthermore, the strategy to liberalize the Botswana beef export market has been completed and will guide the future of the beef industry in Botswana. The implementation of the strategy will include, among other things, the establishment of a meat regulator, a liberalized, competitive and open market for beef products and live cattle, harmonized legislation and regulations across the beef subsector in compliance with health and sanitation standards. Moreover, the implementation of the strategy calls for the restructuring of the Botswana Meat Commission, separation of the linked abattoirs of Lobatse, Maung and Francistown, and the privatization of the organization. It has been necessary to review the sales and marketing for the BMC beef and removal of its export monopoly, as well as its distribution to various regional and international markets to ensure value for money and the sustainability of the company. This will yield a competitive price structure and an improved turnaround time for payment of farmers. The Botswana Meat Commission Transition Bill has been passed in Parliament as part of the initiatives to effect some of these changes. Small stock development, Mr. Speaker. In 2018-2019, over 621 and about 319 tons of goat meat and mutton were produced in the country respectively, while the demand for goat meat and mutton stands at 1,700 and 550 tons. Therefore, there is a need to develop the commodity value chains to increase production. To transform the small stock subsector, government developed a small stock farm at Lubu, which will later be replicated in other areas. A total of 556 stud animals, Dorper sheep and Boer goats have been acquired to improve the quality of the national stock. The long-term objectives are to improve productivity and commercialize operations, strengthen centers of excellence at strategic areas for farmers to benchmark and support upstream infrastructure development while securing markets locally and internationally through available trade agreements. Aquaculture. Mr. Speaker, government is in the process of developing an aquaculture development policy and strategy for Botswana, which will guide the country on how to grow this subsector. Currently, government is operating a fish hatchery rehabilitation in Madinar, which produces fingerlings. To further promote fish utilization by communities, 5 community projects are at different stages of development. These are Tito Village Development Community, VDC Integrated Fish Farming Project, Tuteng Fish Farming Project, Karim Project, and the Shakawe Region Development Support Society, SRDSS. Livestock Management and Infrastructure Development Program, LIMIT. Mr. Speaker, the LIMIT program is progressing well, and in the 2018-2019 financial year, 6,909 applicants benefited from the program, of which 3,718 were youth. Agriculture Credit Guarantee Scheme. ACGS. Mr. Speaker, in order to promote agriculture, food production, and security in Botswana, government continues to implement the Agriculture Credit Guarantee Scheme. The main objective of the scheme is to assist farmers to repay part of their loans in cases of crop failure due to drought, floods, frost, and hailstorm. Following the declaration of 2018-2019 as a drought year, government has paid 134,316,576 to assist farmers who received arable loans from SEDA and the NDB. This amount is equivalent to 85% of the farmers' installments in 2018-2019. The scheme is in the process of being reviewed to align to the developments in the agriculture subsector and to establish the feasibility and sustainability of extending it to cover additional agricultural subsectors and other causes of loss other than drought, floods, frost, and hailstorm, as well as to include other financing institutions. Horticulture. Mr. Speaker, in horticulture, domestic production has registered consistent growth in the past years due to increased production of potatoes and tomatoes. Current production stands at 63,487 tons, accounting for 42.4% of the national demand of 112,000 tons. The restriction on the importation of horticulture products, such as border closures, has helped in developing the local horticulture sector, particularly the fresh vegetables production. As a result, local production of fresh vegetables has shown steady growth over the last 10 years in terms of production and the number of farmers taking part in this sector. The total number of horticulture farmers increased by 61% from 400 in 2008 to 1,018 in 2018. Output of the sector also registered impressive growth over the same period, increasing from 37,890 tons to 65,698 tons in the same period. A notable development in this sector has been the significant increase in the domestic production of non-traditional products such as potatoes. Potato production increased from 2,500 tons in 2010 to 18,059 tons in 2018. Foot and mouth. Mr. Speaker, disease pressure on cattle is high, particularly foot and mouth disease, FMD. Foot and mouth disease outbreaks limit the movement of cattle, resulting in temporary closure of export markets in the affected areas. The high occurrence of measles also has had adverse effects on the beef exports. However, the measles control strategy is beginning to bear fruit, as the prevalence of this disease has dropped 6.5% from 8% reported during the launch of the strategy in August 2018. Government has made improvements in the control of FMD due to the successful implementation of the vaccination strategy. As a result, the World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, has approved Botswana's application for the reinstatement of the FMD-free status in Zone 7, which was lost on account of the outbreak of FMD in May 2011. This listing is expected to expand the foot and mouth disease green zone, thus increasing the number of cattle eligible for lucrative markets. Government continues to rehabilitate cordon fences with priority given to frontier fences bordering FMD affected zones. These fences are barriers for FMD control. However, constant damage of cordon fences by elephants, especially in the northwest and the central districts, puts severe strain on resources and it is unsustainable in the long term. Drought mitigations in agriculture. Following the declaration of 2018-2019 as a drought year, government introduced drought subsidies on livestock feeds, vaccines, and deworming drugs. The initial 25% drought subsidy elapsed in June 2019 and was preceded by a further 35% up to June 2020. The subsidy is expected to act as a relief measure for livestock farmers. Since its inception, a total of 14,599 livestock farmers participated in the drought subsidy, of which 13,220 were male and 1,379 were female, while youth beneficiaries were 1,378. Moreover, a slaughter price incentive of 3 pula per kilogram on direct slaughter across all meat grades at the Botswana Meat Commission was also introduced from June to September 2019 to help mitigate direct drought impact to farmers. A total of 39,748 cattle received the price incentive, amounting to 29,983,553 pula. This, which directly benefited 1,140 people who supplied the BMC over that period. Government further granted a temporary window for export of live cattle for immediate slaughter from June 2019 to March 2020 as a drought intervention measure. A total of 1,662 cattle have so far been exported. These combined drought interventions have had a positive effect on farmers and private sector stakeholders' incomes, increased offtake, and prevention of losses to animals that could have perished in the deteriorated pastures due to drought. As a long-term intervention, government intends to establish fodder banks and fodder reserves in a way such that there will be adequate livestock feeds during the dry periods, including the production of napier grass. The Botswana Animal Information and Traceability System, BATES. Mr. Speaker, the Botswana Animal Information and Traceability System, BATES, is undergoing upgrade to enhance its functionality and facilitate offline access by farmers and extension officers. This is expected to enable registration of communal holdings and georeferencing, thus giving communal farmers direct access to the European Union markets. At least 60 BATES cafes have been established around the country to improve animal information capturing and permit issuance, especially in rural areas. Government has successfully controlled the outbreak of Bond tick in the Tubu and Gumare area. The tick transmits several diseases, including dermatosophliosis, locally known as Senkobu, a very debilitating condition in livestock. About 24,000 cattle, 3,900 small stock, and 385 donkeys and horses were dipped and treated. The intervention has significantly reduced mortality and infestation levels. Tourism development, Mr. Speaker. In an effort to empower citizens, government has made strides in the privatization and management of campsites by IAEA. Furthermore, the amendment of the current law to incorporate issues of nuclear security is in progress. Other activities such as authorizations, inspections, and enforcement are undertaken to ensure compliance with regulatory requirements and to provide assurances to the general public that safety and security of source is maintained. Government continues to sustain the implementation of environmental monitoring strategies aimed at managing public exposure to radiation material. To ensure that the public, radiation workers, and the environment are protected from adverse effects of radiation exposure, government established a fully functional dosimetry and environmental laboratories. Several environmental monitoring sites have also been established countrywide and are indicating normal exposure levels. Furthermore, collection and analysis of environmental samples and foodstuffs in Serule and Hojwani areas are ongoing in preparation for the envisaged uranium mining and milling in the area. Public building infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, regulations of the construction industry. The transformation of the local construction industry remains a priority to government, as it will not only improve performance of the sector, but will also encourage competitiveness in the industry. The introduction of 3 regulatory bodies that cover the professions of engineering, quantity surveying, and architecture, or architects, is expected to bring about professionalism and therefore improve service delivery in the sector. To this end, registration of professionals is progressing well under the 3 regulatory bodies. Besides the registration of professionals in the construction industry, government continues to work on the legislation in an attempt to close the gaps that may hinder the intended reform of the construction sector. To this end, government will review the Engineers Registration Act and the Architects Registration Act in order to close the gaps which have been identified so far during implementation. Housing delivery. Mr. Speaker, government recognizes access to housing as a basic human need and essential to quality of life. In line with the objectives of the National Policy on Housing of 2000, government gives priority to low-income housing programs such as Self-Help Housing Agency, commonly known as SHA. This program has played a very important role in ensuring home ownership through what is now called SHA Turnkey and Home Improvement Program. Decent housing leads to social upliftment and promotes good livelihoods. Furthermore, government continues to explore the use of environmentally sustainable alternative building technologies and promotes partnerships for exchange of ideas on international and national fronts, such as the Sustainable Development Goals and the New Urban Agenda. The Botswana Institute for Technology, Research and Innovation, B3, through nanofiber technology, has produced prototypes of industrial surgical masks. These masks can be used in mines to prevent inhalation of dust particles, as well as in the health industry for protection from viruses. The masks have passed the universal certification tests. Pilot deployment has commenced and will be done at 4 mines in Botswana during this financial year. The organization has also developed and completed a foot and mouth disease test kit, and the kits are currently being processed for commercialization. Knowledge base. The Botswana Innovation Hub has successfully completed 2 projects. The first one is a solar-powered water purification plant installed in Sodwe in the Goren district. The result of this intervention is that the community now has access to potable water. The second is a carrier-neutral data center that creates data hosting and storage facilities by the Botswana Innovation Hub. This has enhanced hosting capabilities for BIH, innovators, and other stakeholders. All the projects have been executed in collaboration with the private sector, and government will, through its institutions, continue to promote the growth of the national innovation ecosystem in partnership with the private sector. In response to the dictates of the 4th Industrial Revolution and the desire to ensure that Botswana acquires skills that will enable them to be active and productive participants in the digitized world, the Botswana Open University has established an academy in partnership with Huawei Technologies Botswana. The academy is aimed at delivering industry-standard training leading to professional certification in different information technology levels and specializations. Mr. Speaker, in order to give impetus to nurturing a culture of research and innovation in Botswana, government introduced the Botswana Innovation Fund in 2017. The fund avails grants to assist startups to close innovation gaps in the development cycle. To date, 12 companies owned by young Botswana innovators have been funded to the tune of 3 million pula. This is a modest start, as we need to have more investment, especially from the private sector. We need to have our own venture capitalists and angel innovators who will complement government's effort in growing our research and innovation capabilities and ecology. I am happy to say that some investors have already come on board to support our research and innovation agenda. As indicated in my inauguration speech, Liquid Telecom has partnered with the Botswana Innovation Hub to train 1,500 youth in coding or software development. I also indicated that a country-wide internet access program for students will see the development of edu zones, providing a dedicated platform that will drive research, innovation, and digital learning around the country. These initiatives provide a strong foundation which we can build and will build upon. Information and communication technology. The use of ICT as a platform for learning. Mr. Speaker, government is in partnership with numerous organizations to support school connections and installation of innovation, information and communication technology, ICT, gadgets in schools. This includes the provision of Wi-Fi and upgrading of bandwidth to a minimum of 2 megabytes per second in schools, as well as teacher capacitation. Video streaming of lessons have been introduced in 3 secondary schools. The plan is to add another 5 schools in 2020 and an additional 2 in 2021. ICT infrastructure development, Mr. Speaker, which includes integrating ICT in teaching and learning, has been availed to all secondary schools, even though it requires upgrading. About 41% of primary schools have ICT infrastructure. In Khansi, Kalahadi, and Mabutsane, all primary schools have been provided with internet, local area network, and ICT officers. Plans are afoot to cover the whole of the Kwelin district in the next financial year. However, there are bandwidth limitations across all schools, hence the need to upgrade bandwidth to high-speed internet. Government, in collaborating with the Botswana Communications Regulatory Authority, BOCRA, the Botswana Fiber Networks, BOFINET, and other telecommunication service providers that assist schools in the enhancement of ICT infrastructure and the provision of high-speed internet, as well as ICT gadgets to promote the integration of ICT in teaching and learning. These are prerequisites to giving out gadgets without the infrastructure. 20,000 tablets and computers have been supplied to 416 primary and secondary schools through the Economic Stimulus Program, and assistance from other stakeholders such as POCRA and Universal Access and Service Fund, UASF, Orange Botswana, Human Resource Development Council, and the Embassy of Japan and the Embassy of the Republic of South Korea. Mr. Speaker, digitization is an important mechanism to support sustainability. In an effort to make learning flexible, convenient, and lifelong, the Botswana Accountancy College has introduced an online learning platform to widen access to education by students in the field of professional accountancy and in business management. Across the country and the region, it is now possible for prospective students to study professional accounting qualifications online. Sub-accountant. In pursuit of promoting access to information, libraries have become community resource centers for fostering lifelong learning and knowledge enhancement. In general, the number of people who visit libraries is about 850,000 annually. A total of 74 out of 105 public libraries offer public access to computers and internet services, and over 74,000 people have been trained on basic ICT skills since the inception of the program in 2009. All these positive results demonstrate the potential that libraries have to champion efforts towards driving the economy from a resource-based to information and knowledge-based economy. To date, 16 technology libraries have been constructed and are fully operational under government's partnership with the Robert and Sarah Rothschild Family Foundation. The 17th library is under construction at Masunga, and it is scheduled to start operation by March 2020. Mr. Speaker, Botswana Post continues to play a vital role in the delivery of ICT services through its increased service bouquet and delivery channels. The recent development resulted in the introduction of Poso Money, an easy, accessible, interoperable mobile money solution that allows customers to conveniently access a wide range of financial products and services. This service leverages on technology to address the challenges faced by the unbanked and the underbanked. It works on any phone and any network. Information and communication technology sector, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that the government continues to undertake various initiatives geared towards the promotion, uptake, and usage of reliable and affordable communication services across various segments of the population. These initiatives are implemented through both government funding and in collaboration with our partners in the private sector, leveraging on the existing mechanisms such as the Universal Access and Service Fund. The USAF has facilitated the provision of services to areas that would otherwise be considered not commercially viable by the network operators and service providers. Mr. Speaker, I am particularly delighted to inform you that these initiatives have started to bear fruit. As at March 2019, the mobile money subscription was standing at 1,149,673. I will say again. As at March 2019, the mobile money subscription was standing at 1,149,673. This has enabled people who would otherwise not have banking accounts, such as domestic workers, the elderly, school-going children, to have access to banking services. The upgrading of the telecommunications coverage in Mabutsane sub-district, Kalahadi and Khansi district, covering 68 villages, has enabled an estimated 70,000 citizens living in these villages to have access to broadband services. As a result of the continued investment in rolling out broadcasting infrastructure by government and the installation of an integrated FM transmitter system for use by commercial radio broadcasters covering the areas of Hukunzi, Tsani, Lokwabe, and the Hututu villages, more than 70% of the population has access to commercial radio stations. The continued call for the reduction in mobile broadband prices has borne fruit, and now all the mobile operators have equated their off-net and on-net call charges, thus reducing the cost to citizens. Our continued efforts to reduce transit call costs by co-construction of backhaul links projects with our neighboring countries, being Namibia and South Africa, has led to an average reduction of 53% of the wholesale of internet price in the last 12 months. While this reduction may have not yet trickled down to the consumers, government is working with concerned stakeholders to ensure that the same benefit is transferred to customers. The National Backbone Network, Mr. Speaker, as I have already highlighted, 211 out of the 400 targeted localities are connected to the National Backbone broadband infrastructure. In 2021, Zutswa, Make, Munong, Wate, Ngang, Ukwi, Kole, Ngujani, and Makunda will be connected through the microwave backhaul radio technologies to bring the number to 220. The remaining villages will be connected by 2023. My government has made significant ICT investments through the Botswana Fiber Network, Bofinet. Today, Botswana has in excess of 10,000 kilometers of optical fiber across the length and breadth of our country. Bofinet also offers a video on demand on the internet through these optical fiber. More has been done to increase fiber connectivity to our homes and develop data centers that will host our data in country. Bofinet recently launched an optical fiber connectivity program to our homes, initially targeting 16,000 homes in Gaborone, and it is expected to be completed in 2020. More than 5,000 businesses are already connected through optical fiber network. It is only through optical fiber infrastructure that we can meet the requirements of the fourth industrial revolution technologies, such as Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, and big data. Human capital development. Botswana human capital and knowledge-based economy. Mr. Speaker, the development of a knowledge-based economy is dependent upon building synergies across the different sectors of our economy. It is within this context that our education quality assurance system will be closely aligned to those of professional bodies. In simple terms, we're going to witness closer collaboration between the Botswana Qualification Authority and professional bodies like the Botswana Health Professional Council, the Engineers Registration Board, the Architects Registration Council, etc., etc. This will go a long way towards engendering quality and relevance of our education to the job market. Most importantly, this endeavor will enhance the global competitiveness of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, due to the ever-evolving needs and expectations by the public on the nature and manner of how services should be delivered, government continues to look for ways and means that will facilitate and enable public officers to deliver efficient and consistent service to the nation. To ensure that this happens, government has developed a productivity improvement blueprint to tackle the most problematic areas of poor work ethic, inefficient government bureaucracy, inadequately educated workforce, restrictive labor laws, and corruption. In addition, government has developed an action plan to respond to the challenges outlined in the 2018 Global Competitiveness Report. The implementation of this action plan is ongoing. Government is also in the process of formulating a public service human resource framework whose intention is to enable the Botswana Public Service to manage the human resources effectively by providing a linkage between human resource policies and procedures. This will form the backbone which will enable the public service to anticipate future service delivery needs and equip it to plan and cater for addressing those needs in a seamless manner. The Botswana Public Service College continues to deliver diverse programs that are targeted at closing competency gaps for public officers. This involves, among others, the review of current programs as well as building effective collaborations. Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, is one of the institutions which, through its experience, will assist the Botswana Public Service College to enrich its program as well as introduce the use of e-learning to reach an extensive client base in Botswana, the region, and the rest of Africa. Deliberate efforts are also being made to ensure the creation of a succession pool through the development of a talent management and succession planning framework. Furthermore, government will progress the implementation of a development-based assessment process as well as assess the impact of programs to respond to current needs. The operationalization of the Botswana Public Service Assessment Development Center is in an advanced stage, with sourcing of key personnel and other logistical arrangements being done to have the center piloted by April 2020. Industrial relations, Mr. Speaker. Social dialogue remains a pillar of good industrial relations in the country. To this end, there are 60 registered trade unions, 2 trade union federations, and in 1 employers' organization. The number of trade unions has gone down as a result of the cancellation of 3 trade unions in May 2019 due to non-compliance with the Trade Unions and Employers Organizations Act and the dissolution of 1 trade union. Labor relations, Mr. Speaker. Tripartite partners comprising representatives of government, employers and workers are finalizing the Botswana Decent Work Country Program for 2019-2023. Priorities for the program are employment creation, social dialogue, social protection, and compliance with international standards. Government is in collaboration with representatives of employers and workers, continues to make progress in the review of labor laws in order to close the gap in the laws and align them with the provisions of the International Labour Organization conventions that have been ratified by Botswana. The consultation process in this regard has resulted in the adoption of the revised list of essential services, which is deemed to be in compliance with ILO Convention number 87. All these underline the commitment of the government to promote workers' rights and doing business. It is critical that the outcome of the consultation process in this regard should be in the best interest of Botswana. Consequently, the implementation of the outcome of these processes requires full consultation between the relevant ministry and all stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, as Botswana continues to strive for decent work, minimum wage rates were increased by 17% for all sectors with the exception of agriculture and domestic sectors, which were increased by 1 to 1,000 pula per month with effect from 1st July 2019. To foster and strengthen workplace occupational health and safety compliance, it has become necessary that the Factories and Workers' Compensation Acts be reviewed in line with the international standards. The review of the laws is expected to help reduce accidents and occupational diseases affecting the workforce and which have a negative impact on compensation claims. Furthermore, a draft occupational health and safety policy has been developed. The review of the acts and the authorization of the policy are expected to be completed in this financial year. Mr. Speaker, to maintain good industrial relations in the country, government has committed to strengthening the labour inspection function. The strengthening of the function seeks to promote social dialogue at the workplace, which in turn would reduce the number of trade disputes referred for mediation. A labour inspection policy is being developed to provide a framework for the function. The development of the policy is expected to be completed by December 2019. Government is determined to improve its relationship with public sector unions, and it is working towards the resuscitation of the Public Sector Service Bargaining Council, which collapsed in 2017 due to misunderstandings between both parties. The Botswana the Public Service Bargaining Council remains the legal platform through which issues of employment relations ought to be negotiated and agreed upon, thereby promoting a harmonious relationship between the government as the employer and employee organizations. It therefore calls for each concerned party to commit to the Council's resuscitation. Mr. Speaker, government is committed to building constructive employer-employee relations and transforming Botswana into a high-performing nation that leverages on the fourth industrial revolution to improve public service delivery and citizen participation to fast-track employment generation and socio-economic development. In our pursuit of public service efficiency and effectiveness, government and public service unions, as partners, have been working hard to foster good employee relations in the public service. So far, some notable milestones have been achieved, which include the successful conclusion of salary negotiations between government and public service unions. In August 2019, government and public service unions concluded a monumental agreement on Pemandu and other conditions of service for public service employees. Some of the key issues that the parties were able to agree on are remuneration policy for the public service, the development of a fan-shaped salary structure, the increase of medical aid contributions by government for employees on salary scales grades A and B, as well as an increase of the monthly salaries of public service employees on grade A to D. Mr. Speaker, government is currently working on the development of a public service remuneration policy and the development of a new salary structure with an integrated differential to facilitate pay for performance and reduce stagnation. Furthermore, in October 2019, my government took a decision on the re-employment of former public service employees who were dismissed as a direct result of having participated in the public service national industrial strike of 2011. So far, 229 former employees have submitted requests for re-employment. It is also worth noting, Mr. Speaker, that following the completion of work by the Commission led by Honourable Justice Monamedzi, government has adopted most of the recommendations by the Commission to improve the conditions of service for members of Parliament, honourables, honourable councillors, members of Nkwadi Khosi, and the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, although some milestones have been achieved, there is still more that needs to be done. The focus now should be on the critical outstanding issues relating to the resuscitation of the Public Service Bargaining Council and the review of labour laws. I wish to urge relevant parties to speed up the process of concluding this important task. That notwithstanding, government and recognized public service trade unions successfully negotiated salary adjustments for the financial years 2019 to 2020 and 2020-2021 in February 2019. Government shall continue to promote the relationship with the public sector unions to ensure that any animosity between the two parties is permanently dealt with. Employee safety at the workplace continues to be a challenge, and therefore the government, through its structures, is committed to reducing work-related injuries and diseases at all costs. The Safety, Health and Environment Unit at the Directorate of Public Service Management was established solely to ensure safety at the workplace and to drive the program across government. Sports and cultural development, Mr. Speaker. Sport development first. As part of government's initiative to promote Botswana as a destination of choice for major conferences and international events, Botswana hosted two major sporting events, being the African Union Sports Council Region 5 Youth Games and the Africa Karate Championships. Botswana will strive to host more international sporting events, not only to attract foreign direct investment, but also to develop the capacity of our people and create jobs. In addition to hosting, our national teams continue to achieve encouraging results with a total of 232 medals won, 81 of which are gold, and international sporting events over the last 12 months.
Well done to our sports players.
And tonight, as you've been invited, we shall all go to the stadium to cheer the Zebras on. And they too will win. Mr. Speaker, government continues to develop sport infrastructure across the country to promote participation in sports and recreation. A project aimed at providing basic sporting facilities to the rural and semi-urban communities where there is shortage of such facilities is currently underway. The project is being implemented in the following localities: Bobono, Good Hope, Kanye, Kasani, Madinari, Moshopa, Reikops, Tonota, Tsabong, and Tutume. Over 50 million pula has been allocated for the 10 projects, and it is expected that during construction, jobs will be created in all the localities. Cultural and creative industries. Mr. Speaker, in recognition of the talent of our people and the potential of the cultural and creative industries to create jobs, my government has initiated processes to improve legislation and policy frameworks for the sector. This includes the review of the Cinematography Act, the development of the National Arts Council Act, and the accession to the UNESCO 2005 Convention on the Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expression. Transport sector, aviation sector, Mr. Speaker. The development of facilities and improvement of businesses for the aviation industry is expected to contribute immensely towards the growth of tourism, mining, as well as various businesses and trade opportunities, which will subsequently contribute to the growth of the country's gross domestic product. Government will continue to develop our transport infrastructure in order to attract investors and tourists. Considering the importance of Maung in the growth of tourism, efforts to decongest its airport terminal are underway. A decongestion terminal project was started in April 2019. This project is anticipated to be completed within 12 months. The Civil Aviation Authority of Botswana, in partnership with CESA, will also develop the landside at Sesretsakama International Airport as a way to maximize the non-aeronautical revenue space. The idea behind this partnership is to create value from the Sesretsakama International Airport landside, which is approximately 573 hectares, and further achieve the expectations of the Civil Aviation Authority Act of 2011 of becoming financially viable. The Open Skies Policy. Mr. Speaker, Botswana, upon the implementation of this Open Skies Policy, will add significantly to the growth of the aviation industry. A total of 6 main airports are operational in Botswana, in addition to 20 secondary airfields designed for the operation of aircraft to a maximum all-up weight of 5,500 kilograms. The overall connectivity of Botswana to the African region is mainly driven through the four major airports being the Sasratsakama International Airport, the Maung International Airport, the Kasane International Airport, and the Philip Matante International Airport in Francistown. Mr. Speaker, scheduled international movements are offered by 5 carriers, which are Air Botswana, Air Namibia, Ethiopian Airlines, SA Airlink, and South African Express. These airlines offer direct connections between Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, and Ethiopia. The new scheduled services will expand our connectivity to 3 more destinations, being Victoria Falls, Harare, and Lusaka. Qatar Airways will add to the operators by starting to fly into the country in mid-December 2019. Furthermore, Air Botswana will also commence operations to Harare and Lusaka, exercising 5th freedom traffic rights between Lusaka and Harare. Over and above these, another airline, MAC Airline, has been licensed by CAAB to carry out scheduled services between Maung and Windhoek and between Kasane and Victoria Falls. The operations is anticipated to commence during the last quarter of this financial year. Air Botswana, with the assistance of government, procured 3 of the 4 aircraft it needs to effectively operate and deliver on its mandate as per its current 2016-2021 turnaround strategy. The 3 aircraft, namely the 2 ATR 72600 and the Embraer E170 jet, have been integrated into operation. The airline is still awaiting the foreign operators permit from the governments of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia to facilitate jet operation. Road transport, Mr. Speaker. Road infrastructure development remains a fundamental aspect of sustainable economic growth, and thus government will continue to view it as one of the country's priority areas. During the 2019-2020 financial year, a number of construction projects have commenced and are at various stages of completion. One of the most significant is the Kazungula Bridge project, a bilateral project between Botswana and Zambia, which includes the development of a one-stop border post facility straddling the bridge. Other projects and their expected completion dates are the Mohembo Bridge project, due for completion in October 2020. According to the revised program, the upgrading of the Gaborone-Boatla 20-kilometer dual carriageway, due for completion in February 2020. The Dibiti, Mokani, and Machaneng 132-kilometer road, due for completion in August 2020. The Tsesebe Masunga 51-kilometer road, due for completion in August 2021. The Charles Hill Ngujani 109-kilometer road, due for completion in April 2020. And the Mamela Apudi Serule 61.5-kilometer road, due for completion in July 2020. And the Musu Kalamabele 28-kilometer road, due for completion in July 2020. Mr. Speaker, other construction works being implemented under the output and performance-based road contracts along the A10 and A2 roads are the Mankodi Junction, Kanye Joining, and the B101 road, Rakuna, Karasilele, Pitsani, Molopo road, Molopo Babule road, which is due for completion in December 2019. Mr. Speaker, following the agreement between Botswana, the government of Botswana, and the government of the People's Republic of China, a feasibility study is being conducted for the reconstruction of the dilapidated Nata-Maung road. This will pave the way for the upgrading of the road, which is planned for the next financial year. Government will also design and reconstruct the A3 road from Francistown to Nata and Maung Mohembo, some sections of the Natagazungula Road and the Palape Martins Drift Road. The A3 road plays an important role in linking Botswana with Central Africa as we anticipate the increase in freight transport upon the completion of the Kazungula Bridge. Road maintenance, Mr. Speaker. Government is aware of the status of some of the roads in the country which require urgent attention with regard to maintenance interventions. Government intends to ensure that these roads become acceptable for use. Road sections that have been completed through periodic maintenance during the 2018-2019 financial year are Sihitokuke, 86 kilometers road, the Khansi Junction Tsoota Road Section A, 40 kilometer road, and the Atishia Dibiti, 47 kilometer road, and the Makalamabedi Maung, 61 kilometer road, the A3 Matangwane Road Section, and the A2 Junction, 44 Mamuno Road, and the Molepole Lepepe 94 kilometer road. Road safety, Mr. Speaker. Road safety remains a public safety challenge as witnessed by the number of lives lost on our roads. Collaborative efforts with all relevant stakeholders in reducing road traffic accidents that result in fatal and serious injuries are being pursued. To this end, the Botswana Police Service, the Roads Department, and the Health Services sector will continue to take a leading role in reducing the number of accidents on our roads. The Botswana Integrated Transport Project, BITP. Mr. Speaker, the supply and installation of equipment for the new Greater Gaborone Traffic Signals System Modernization and provision of centralized traffic control project was launched in August 2019, and on-site installation is currently in progress. This project will modernize the traffic signal system in Greater Gaborone to be responsive to peak and off-peak traffic changes. It will also be centrally controlled, resulting in overall improvement in traffic flow. The construction of 3 interchanges along KT Motsete Drive was launched in October 2019, and site clearance works commenced this past Friday on the 15th of August 2019. Meanwhile, the design for layout improvements of selected intersections along the new traffic signal system is underway, due for completion by March 2020, and construction is expected to commence in the coming financial year. Under the Botswana Integrated Transport Project, government will also complete the National Multimodal Transport Master Plan and the Greater Gaborone Transport Master Plan during the coming financial year. These will guide future transport development nationally and within the Greater Gaborone context. Rail transport, Mr. Speaker. Botswana Railways has identified key infrastructural projects which need to be undertaken during NDP 11. These projects will promote economic diversification and international trade. Among these projects are conducting the feasibility of the Mamabula Lepalale rail line. The proposed new rail link would start at Mamabula coalfields and end at Lepalale, where it will connect with the South African railway network. The other project by Botswana Railways is to carry out a feasibility study for an estimated 367 railway line from Masisi to Kazungula. The Masisi-Kazungula railway line will link the Botswana and Zambian railway network, creating a direct north-south corridor from Botswana through to the Republic of South Africa. The commuter train service, Mr. Speaker. Government intends to reduce traffic congestion and road accidents, particularly in the Greater Gaborone area. In order to realize this, the Botswana Railways has introduced a commuter service train from Lobatse to Gaborone. This service is currently using mainline locomotives and coaches, which are expensive to maintain. Therefore, government is considering introducing diesel multiple units, DMUs for short, which are fit for purpose to run this service, As soon as the DMUs are purchased, the commuter train service will also be extended to areas between Pilan and Gaborone and will include stops such as Morwa, Mamashia, Pagalani, and Sibil. Land use planning and management. Mr. Speaker, government has identified land use as a critical factor in the development of the economy and empowerment of citizens of this country. As one of the facilitative initiatives for improved land use planning, government approved the National Spatial Plan in June 2019, the NSP. The NSP is a framework that provides guidance for planning future development and investment in the country. This plan is currently in the process of being mainstreamed into other processes, such as the National Development Planning process, in order to facilitate optimal development outcomes for Botswana. In an endeavor to create vibrant urban centers with capabilities to unlock opportunities for development and the promotion of innovative economic activities, government has prepared revitalization plans for the strategic areas in Francistown, Lobatse, Silibepikwe, Kasane, and Kazungula. These plans, once fully adopted and implemented, will play a pivotal role in leading the transformation and revitalization of these towns and cities, making them more attractive to investors. Government has significantly invested in the land registration system and improvements on land administration through the Land Administration Procedures Capacity and Systems LAPCAS project. This project was conceived with a view to develop efficient, effective, and transparent land administration by devising a system through which all land rights in the country would be surveyed and registered. Water. Mr. Speaker, the government of Botswana remains committed to the provision of potable water and sanitation services. Several governance and legislative instruments geared towards the provision of clean water and safely managed sanitation are currently being developed. In support of this endeavor, the 1968 Water Act and its related piece of legislation are being reviewed. National water security. Mr. Speaker, the total water demand currently stands at 245 million cubic meters. The demand is expected to increase to 340 million cubic meters by 2035. The main water sources are surface water, groundwater, and wastewater reuse. The water supply status is at 225 million cubic meters. Botswana is consistently experiencing hydrological droughts that lead to challenges in water security. Climate change uncertainty calls for the need to put in place a water security strategy. The strategy would include water conservation, reclamation, recycling, groundwater exploration, well field expansion, and mega transfer schemes such as the Chobe Zambezi, Lesotho Highlands, and utilization of seawater from the Atlantic Ocean are the potential sources for water security. At present, there are a number of water and sanitation infrastructure development projects that are being implemented. These are network rehabilitation, upgrade, and refurbishment of systems, and the water conveyance pipelines from already existing resources to demand areas. The optimization of the North-South water carrier was completed in June 2019. The objective of the project was to improve water supply for the Greater Gaborone area by increasing the water flows to the Mamashia water treatment plant from 700 liters per second to a minimum of 1,000 liters per second and a maximum of 1,350 liters per second. Currently, the pump station is delivering 1,200 liters per second. Efforts towards wastewater reuse are done through the rehabilitation of the Glen Valley Treatment Plant and the Glen Valley Reclamation Projects. The rehabilitation of the Glen Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant is to ensure compliance of treated sewage with the requirements of reclamation. The project will bring back the Glen Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant to a treatment capacity of 90 million litres per day. The rehabilitation project commenced in May 2019 and is to be completed in April 2020. Meanwhile, the Glen Valley water reclamation is at feasibility stage. The project is intended to reclaim 60 million litres of water, 60 million litres a day to augment water supply to the Greater Gaborone area. Sustainable groundwater supply capacity stands at 96 million cubic meters, but presently the amount of groundwater use is 28 million cubic meters, which is approximately 30% of sustainable water capacity. Efforts to optimize the utilization of groundwater resources are done through projects such as the construction of the 100-kilometer pipeline from Masama well feeds to Mamashia, which is meant to increase water supply to the southern part of Botswana by 64 million litres per day. The project is intended to mitigate the existing deficit in the Greater Gaborone area and address the imminent severe supply deficit following the connection of Tamaga, Moshopa and Kanye to the north-south carrier. Energy. Regulation of the energy industry. Mr. Speaker, government continues to undertake organizational reforms to align its mandate to promote economic inclusion and green technology. Government is currently reviewing and developing appropriate regulations to increase an enabling environment, to create an enabling environment for wealth creation in the energy sector. In this regard, government is reviewing the Botswana Energy Regulatory Authority Act and the draft regulations and draft petroleum products bill, as well as the gas bill to regulate and facilitate the private sector. Therefore, the coming into operation of such an act will provide for the manufacturing, supply, storage, distribution, retail, and use of the petroleum products. The Act will also facilitate the operation of Botswana Oil Limited. The existence of the Act will provide for the development and operation of upstream and downstream activities such as exploration, production, supply, storage, distribution, retail, and the use of gas products. BERA continues to monitor the activities, conduct, and compliance of industry players to ensure that there is increased economic contribution in the trading of petroleum products. As a result of the effective monitoring, the regulator has confiscated about 310,000 litres of fuel worth 2,945,000 pula. Security of supply of petroleum products. Mr. Speaker, to further ensure national security of fuel supply, the government is developing additional strategic fuel storage facilities through Botswana Oil Limited. These are the 186 million litres Tele Hill storage to be implemented through public-private partnerships, PPP. The project is at the inception stage and will pave way for the procurement of the developer. In promoting access to petroleum products in remote areas, which are traditionally not serviced by the international oil companies, Botswana Oil is working on introducing remote area energy centers, which are effectively small, containerized mobile filling stations that are aimed at promoting access to petroleum products in remote areas. Solar energy program, Mr. Speaker. The solar energy is going to be promoted vigorously so that it becomes a significant contributor to the energy sector. Government is also developing solar guidelines to enable Botswana to generate electricity for their own use while selling any excess to the Botswana Power Corporation up to a limit that will be defined by the regulator. These guidelines are envisaged to be completed by the end of this financial year. This will help to diversify power generation away from dependence on thermal generation and further economically empower Botswana. electricity generation, transmission and distribution infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the main power infrastructure development projects being undertaken by government through the Botswana Power Corporation include the refurbishment of Morupule a 132 megawatt power station, Morupule B, a 600 megawatt power station, defects, remediation, extension, reinforcement and refurbishment of the transmission and distribution network, as well as the electrification of villages. Significant progress has been made to achieve self-sufficiency in power generation with the return to service of the Morupule A power station before the end of this financial year. The Morupule B defects remediation project, which is meant to address the ensuing plant performance challenges, is now at the implementation stage, with the remedial works having commenced on the first unit in June 2019. All construction and equipment defects which are impacting on the Morupule B plant viability should be addressed in the next 4 years. This plant will thereafter be expected to operate reliably, generating 600 megawatts of power. A study to determine future generation requirements beyond 2024 is underway and is expected to be completed before the end of this financial year. Mr. Speaker, the Northwest Transmission Grid Extension Project is at an advanced stage, with a grid switch on schedule for the end of March 2020. This project will stimulate mining activities in the Northwest region. Another initiative, being the Rural Electrification Project, is currently ongoing. As at October 2019, 60 villages have been completed from the planned 115 villages. The ongoing electrification of villages provide access to clean energy to rural communities, which is fundamental for socio-economic development and poverty eradication. Mining, mineral sector, Mr. Speaker. The combination of factors have contributed to widespread uncertainty and a global downturn in the diamond industry during the first half of 2019. Economic uncertainty generated by an unstable geopolitical climate has also fostered a heightened sense of caution among the banks that finance the trade, as well as diamond brokers and consumers of luxury goods. The execution of the Joaneng Mine, Cut 9, commenced in April 2019 and will extend the life of the mine from 2028 to 2035. The project is envisaged to employ 1,153 people at peak production, of which 98% will be citizens. The Joaneng Cut 9 project will bring about benefits, including the establishment of a mining equipment component rebuild center in Botswana. The Botswana Mining Company is also planning to reopen the apprentice and artisan training center. The company aims to develop citizen suppliers in key areas of the diamond value chain. Joaneng Mine currently employs 4,756 people, of which 4,671 or 98.2% are citizens. The Letlhakane Mine Tailings Treatment Project started in 2016, and the company is doing a feasibility study to evaluate options of going underground. Lucara Botswana is doing a feasibility study at the Karoo mine with a strategic plan to go underground in 2023 to increase the lifespan of the mine to 2041. Karoo mine currently employs 862 people, of which 850 or 98.6% are citizens. Komitau Copper Mining in the Northwest has started the construction of the box cuts at Zone 5 mining concession, with anticipation to start concentrate exportation during the first quarter of 2021. 3 box cuts, whose groundbreaking ceremony was performed in June 2019, are being constructed. The construction of the whole road from Zone 5 to the Busetu plant in Toteng has commenced and will be used to transport ore from the mine to the plant. The mine currently employs 814 people, of which 781 or 95.9% are citizens. Minergy Coal has completed the box cut and exposed the coal, and the plant is operational, and the mine has started to export coal to the Republic of South Africa. Gangu Mine in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, which has been under the care and maintenance of a liquidator since the first quarter of 2017, has found an investor who is considering its acquisition. The mine currently employs 95 people, of whom 94 or 98.9% are citizens. Bamangwatu Concession Limited, BCA. Mr. Speaker, the task team set up to carry out an evaluation to delineate the BCL assets completed their work at the end of June 2019. The report from the task team was submitted to the new liquidators to consider the findings and facilitate decision-making on the next stage. Since taking over the liquidation process in August this year, the new liquidator has given 7 companies permission to carry out due diligence reviews on the BCL and 30 mining assets to inform themselves if they can invest in the assets. Government continues to support the liquidation process by funding care and maintenance costs to preserve the assets while investors are doing their due diligence. It must be appreciated that this is a delicate and complex exercise that will take time to evaluate and implement. Diamond industry performance. Mr. Speaker, the global diamond industry in the first half of 2019 has faced a variety of challenges, leading to widespread uncertainty and declining commerce across all segments of the diamond value chain. Sales for the first 7 months of 2019 were $2.2 billion as compared to $2.8 billion during the same period last year, signifying a reduction in sales of 21%. Over the first 7 months of 2019, an array of interrelated developments across the entire value chain have exerted pressure on Botswana's diamond production and sales. One of the key drivers of the first half slowdown was the overstocking of polished diamonds by the retailers, thus reducing the demand for rough diamonds. Despite the prevailing challenges in the sector, Botswana remained the single largest contributor to the increase in the value of the world diamond production in 2018, as we increased our output by 6% to 24.4 million carats, while the average price earned for our rough diamonds remained steady at $145 per carat. Government has developed a diamond beneficiation strategy in order to enable citizen participation in the diamond value chain. Among other things, the strategy is expected to equip citizens with appropriate industry skills, general management and leadership skills, as well as incubation of citizen businesses. Governance, democracy and good governance. Mr. Speaker, Botswana remains committed to uphold the shared values of democracy, good governance, the rule of law, and the respect for human rights. These universal ideals are undoubtedly the foundation for any sustainable development, peace, unity, and prosperity, for which my government is steadfast in their preservation and advancement. As I stated in my inaugural speech recently, my government intends to conduct a comprehensive review of the Constitution of Botswana. This critical exercise aims to remove any provisions that may be deemed discriminatory, as well as strengthen the functions of oversight institutions, thus improving Botswana's functional democracy. The envisaged review will be conducted in accordance with one of our fundamental national principles of consultation for inclusiveness. The adoption of the Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Bill by the 11th Parliament in August this year is a commendable milestone in our resolve as a nation to intensify our efforts to fight corruption. It also demonstrates my government's commitment to fulfill our international obligations contained in multilateral instruments such as the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the establishment of the Ethics and Integrity Directorate, which will be responsible for administering the law on the declaration of assets and liabilities, as well as conflict of interest, is currently underway. The office is expected to be operational by December 2019. We are enhancing the transparency and maturity of our democracy through the reinforcement of the foundations of good governance. The constitutional review and the strengthening of the functions of oversight institutions, as well as declarations of assets and liabilities, are measures that ensure that justice is not just done, but seen to be done. These measures will speak to the conviction that upholding the rule of law is sacrosanct and not negotiable. We are taking these steps to entrench the ideal that no one is above the law. When our forebearers laid these foundations, they bestowed upon us the legacy of continuity through the fortification of the pillars of our democracy so that they can stand the test of time. We are steadfast in the determination to ensure that Botswana remains clean of contaminants that can steer us away from the path of democracy and good governance that we so proudly inherited from our forefathers. In February this year, Botswana acceded to the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, whose overarching objective is to promote political and economic governance with a view to achieve political stability, accelerated continental integration, as well as sustainable development. Botswana's membership to this continental self-assessment mechanism will further enrich her strong democratic culture. In an effort to bring services close to the public, as well as increasing accessibility, the Office of the Ombudsman has decentralized its services, which are now available in Gaborone, Francistown, Maung, and more recently, Tsabong. The Tsabong office is at the initial stage of operation, while the other three are fully functional. Public sector reforms. Mr. Speaker, in order to improve public service efficiency, my government has embarked upon a rationalization exercise of ministerial portfolio responsibilities and functions. To this end, government is considering the rationalization of government ministries to improve service delivery, eliminating any duplication and overlaps of responsibilities across sectors, closing any existing structural gaps, as well as identifying obsolete functions. Moreover, government will consider a relabeling exercise of government ministries to make their names easy, relevant, and more meaningful to people. The National Transformation Strategy is key to the turnaround of Botswana's economic fortunes. In this regard, the National Transformation Task Team's functions will be aligned to that of the National Vision 2036 Council for delivering our national objectives. The alignment will encompass our local government structures as well as village development committees, thereby enabling ownership and responsibility to deliver on our national vision to Botswana. The National Monitoring and Evaluation System. Botswana continues to strengthen public sector management implementation of the National Monitoring and Evaluation System, NMES. The main purpose of this system is to promote the use of performance information for evidence-based policy and decision-making to improve public sector performance. The ongoing midterm review processes of NDP 11 provides an opportunity for thematic working groups to use the indicators and the targets as contained in the NDP 11 performance framework to objectively review the implementation of NDP 11. Legislative review. Mr. Speaker, the Ombudsman Act of 1995 is currently being amended to broaden its mandate by conferring on it the responsibility to protect and promote human rights. In that respect, The new law shall give the Office of the Ombudsman enough powers to effectively execute its functions. In the last financial year, the office recorded a high reduction of backlog cases as it attained a 91.8% backlog resolution rate. The achievement was made possible by closer engagement of the Ombudsman with accounting officers to deepen understanding of the process of complaint resolution. Furthermore, the formalization of the preparation of annual case lists to government has had a positive impact on the case resolution rate. In 2018, Parliament enacted a total of 25 acts in order to comply with FATF recommendations on the prevention and control of the laundering of the proceeds of crime, the financing of terrorism, and the financing of the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. The 25 acts referred to have similarly met the Sustainable Development Goal 16 on just, peaceful, and inclusive societies. The targets of SDG 16 include significant reduction of illicit financial and arms flows to strengthen the recovery and return of stolen assets and to combat all forms of organized crime, to reduce corruption and bribery in all their forms, and to develop effective, accountable, and transparent institutions at all levels by preventing violence and combating terrorism and crime. In this respect, in October 2018, Mr. Speaker, Botswana made a request for the re-rating of the 25 anti-money laundering, combating financing of terrorism legislation enacted in 2018 for its compliance with the FATF standards. The re-rating of Botswana laws was undertaken by ISAMLAC at its 37th meeting of senior officials held in Tanzania in April 2019. The outcome of the request was that of the 38 FATF recommendations requested for re-rating, only 32 were granted. In order to ensure full compliance of Botswana's laws with FATF standards, the Financial Intelligence Act, the Trust Property Act, the Counter-Terrorism Regulations, and the Financial Intelligence Regulations are being amended to close the gaps identified during the re-rating of Botswana's laws. Botswana will submit a second request for re-rating for consideration by ISAMLAC at the April 2020 meeting. Access to justice and rule of law. Mr. Speaker, the core mandate of the judiciary is to interpret the law and resolve disputes. The focus and priority this year is on restructuring the judiciary to make it more relevant and responsive to the emerging trends of the 21st century. A major milestone in the judicial history of this country is that the judiciary has been fully localized. As a result, the judicial interpretation of the laws is relevant to the customs and norms of the nation. Mr. Speaker, government has established a corruption court to deal solely with all forms of corruption. This is also intended to enhance the disposal of these cases, which tend to take long to prosecute. The court will be rolled out to other high court divisions, since it has been operating at only one high court. Office of the Receiver. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Receiver was established by the Proceeds and Instruments of Crime Act, PICA, with the mandate to seize, manage, and preserve the value of property in its possession until the court decides how the property should be dealt with. As of July 2019, the receiver had been served with 21 court orders directing him to take over the management of immovable and movable property, including residential and industrial plots, vehicles, furniture, farms, cattle, and cash. Refugee movement. Mr. Speaker, as of October 2019, there were 2,999 refugees in Botswana. This number has significantly declined as 770 Namibian nationals whose refugee status in Botswana had ceased were successfully and cordially returned to Namibia. This exercise was conducted under the United Nations High Commission for Refugees guidance and supervision. National security. The Botswana Defence Force. Mr. Speaker, a strong and prosperous Botswana is premised on the assurance of national security. Botswana is an independent and sovereign state. Botswana, as an independent and sovereign state, has to ensure the security of its people and its territorial integrity. To this effect, the Botswana Defence Force is being recapacitated to effectively carry out its mandate. Beyond national defence and our frontiers, Botswana, as a responsible member of the international community, has obligations through organizations such as the United Nations, the African Union, and the Southern Africa Development Community to contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security. For this reason, the BDF is undergoing relevant restructuring and training to enable it to take part in peacekeeping and other security operations. The Botswana Police Service. In the quest to ensure public safety and protection, the Botswana Police Service has actively adopted community policing strategy, which allows the police and the community to work closely to combat crime with notable success. The determination of the police service to reduce crime has enhanced public confidence in the police locally and placed Botswana as a country in good standing in the international arena. The police service investigation capacity has also been enhanced to appropriately deal with drug and human trafficking, fraud, money laundering, and cyber attacks through the establishment of international relations and cyber forensics departments. Prisons and rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, the daily average population in prisons is 7.6% below the authorized holding capacity due to a reduction in the number of offenders incarcerated and successful rehabilitation programs. This effort will be complemented by finalization of a national prisoner rehabilitation policy in 2020. Foreign policy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I stated in my last State of the Nation address, Botswana continues to nurture friendly relations with other countries and forge strategic partnerships with the international community for her benefit and the greater good of humanity. In this context, I am pleased to note that in the last year, relations between Botswana and other countries, as well as international organizations, has continued to mature and assume a more strategic significance. This has been evidently illustrated by the number of high-level exchanges undertaken with other countries, bilateral engagement at various levels of government, people-to-people interactions, the number of international conferences we hosted, and the leadership roles that we assumed in regional as well as international organizations. As you may be aware, in terms of engagements, I had the honor and privilege to undertake state visits to the Republic of Kenya and Qatar during this period, while I also had the pleasure to host high-level visits by the heads of state to the Republic of Rwanda and the Republic of Namibia. I further undertook working visits to the United States of America, Poland, Switzerland, and South Africa. Regionally, I have engaged extensively with my counterparts through structured bilateral mechanisms such as the binational commissions, BNCs. We thus held a binational commission with Zimbabwe in February 2019. I also participated in the 32nd ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government Summit held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in February this year. I note with satisfaction that in recognition of Botswana's commitment towards the regional agenda, she was assigned the following leadership roles in the international system. At the last SADC summit held in Tanzania in August this year, Botswana was elected to chair the SADC organ on politics, defense, and security cooperation, a tenure that will commence in August 2020 until August 2021. This means the region has bestowed a huge responsibility and honor on Botswana to spearhead the regional peace agenda. Botswana also holds membership in the following critical committees at both the United Nations and the African Union: the United Nations Economic and Social Council, the United Nations Committee of Conferences, the United Nations Committee on Programs and Coordination, as well as the African Union's Committee of Finance Ministers. We have also made headway in placing Botswana in strategic positions in international organizations. In this regard, we remain deeply appreciative of the support extended to us by SADC and the African Union in the re-election of Dr. Masisi to the position of Africa Regional Director and the election of Justice Sanji Monageng as Judge of the SADC Administrative Dispute Tribunal. For the first time ever, Botswana participated at the highest political level in the World Economic Forum, both in Davos, Switzerland, and in Cape Town, South Africa. Our participation at these high-level fora enabled us to meaningfully engage the international community to secure favorable outcomes from bodies such as the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, the Joint Program on HIV/AIDS, and the Office of the United Nations Secretary General. I must say, these engagements are bearing fruit. A case in point was the invaluable support we received from UNCTAD in devising innovative strategies for Botswana's transformation to a knowledge-based economy. Conclusion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude my speech by reiterating the fact that my government places its citizens at the epicenter of its national development agenda. Therefore, we have to ensure that all our citizens are involved in this development process. The achievements we have made over the past 12 months give confidence to our national aspirations as we embark on our economic transformation. I would like to highlight some of these achievements that give impetus to my government's commitment to transform the lives of our people. These include a record passing of legislation relating to anti-terrorism and anti-money laundering, the review of the land policy for mixed use by citizens, the relaxation of immigration laws to facilitate foreign investment, the improvement of relations with the labor movement, the presidential initiatives targeted towards generating youth employment in the ICT and the creative industry sectors, the passing of the Declaration of Assets and Liabilities Act, the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the privatization and management of campsites by citizens in protected areas, particularly national parks, the review of the hunting ban to facilitate wildlife management strategies, and the reintroduction of community-based natural resource management, among others. The mandate bestowed upon us through the recent general elections is without doubt a refreshing and rejuvenating breeze as we strive forth to develop our country and its people. It is a mandate that we uphold with the utmost respect and one that will not be returned with complacency. Instead, we are even more resolute as Botswana and full of gratitude for the solid mandate. We aim to deliver, and in doing so, we shall take it upon us, all of us, to ensure that we take everyone on board. There is spring in the air. We are ushering in an airflow of media freedom. There is a discernible current of business confidence in the country. We are assured of the freedoms guaranteed in our Bill of Rights. and the atmosphere that permits individual freedoms devoid of fear or anxiety, and there's happiness on the faces of our citizens. Batswana bethu, since this is a plowing season, I urge all of you to take advantage of the recent rains. Go and plow. I thank you for your attention. Apulain.